What's happening, fam? I'm John with AFA, and I'm back with another Dragon Ball movie review video, this time reviewing the next 3 movies in the Dragon Ball franchise, being Lord Slug, Cooler's Revenge, and The Return of Cooler, respectively. Now, admittedly, there actually is one movie that came out before these 3 in the form of a TV special that is titled Dragon Ball Z Bardock, Father of Goku. I'm not going to cover that in this video. I'll cover all of the special movies or the TV shorts or even the video game movie in detail in a later video. But for now, we'll go ahead and continue with the theatrical movie releases, starting off with Dragon Ball Z, Lord Slug. And personally, I can go ahead and say that as a kid, or at least as a teenager, I remember this movie, and I actually want to classify it as probably my least favorite movie of all time in terms of Dragon Ball movies. And I gotta say, after watching it again, after this good 20-year gap of the last time I've seen it, I'm going to go ahead and say that it still is my least favorite so far. And I'll explain why, but first I'll go ahead and sum up the plot for you guys. The plot of the movie starts off with Gohan, Piccolo, Bulma, and her father realizing that there's something heading towards Earth. And as Bulma's father looks into it with the telescope, he figures out that a planet-sized object is heading toward them, and they can't just destroy it because there's life forms on there. So Krillin recruits the help of Goku to fly up there and somehow divert the planet by using their Kamehamehas to somehow push it off to the wayside of Earth. And this kind of already has so many issues in terms of the laws of physics, but it does set up as a convenient plot device to take Goku and Krillin out of the story, so that way Gohan and Piccolo can have their quick moment in the sun before getting rolled up and needing Goku to come for the save. However, before that can happen, the big bad realizes that there are Dragon Balls on Earth and then manages to scoop them up while Goku and Krillin are unconscious for what appears to be a day or two. So after Piccolo gets prescribed his typical movie ass whooping, Goku and Krillin show up and start a fight where Goku quickly gains the upper hand when he goes into this kind of faux Super Saiyan form, which I suppose is kind of a teaser of sorts because the Super Saiyan form was revealed in the manga within that same month, but actually before that movie came out. So it was kind of a cool little Easter egg, but at the same time, it's kind of treading on thin ice in a sense that it can't really fit into the canon because at that time, the Frieza storyline is going on. Frieza is actually even mentioned by King Kai, and Goku seems to understand who that is, so it kind of really serves to sell the point that these movies, at least up until this point, really can't fit into the canon whatsoever. But moving back onto the plot, we learn from King Kai after Goku is pretty much done getting rolled up that this character, Lord Slug, is basically a Namekian who left the planet early and is kind of like a Brawly type, where he was born with an excess of power and is basically pure evil. This is very plot convenient to the Dragon Ball movies, where you just get this super villain out of nowhere. But I digress. King Kai reveals to Goku that this is a Super Namekian, which probably has greater potential than a Super Saiyan. I know that's very far-fetched, but just remember, it's not canon. So moving back to the plot, Goku is being gripped and crushed in the same fashion that he was back when he fought Vegeta, when Piccolo rationalizes that they can actually defeat this guy using whistling. So he rips off his ears, Gohan begins to whistle, and the big bad is set for defeat at that point. Piccolo passes off some energy to Goku, which somehow puts Goku's energy higher than it was before. He blasts through Lord Slug in a similar fashion that he did with King Piccolo, gets all the way up into the sky, and then uses the sun to destroy Lord Slug and his weather manipulating device. So that is going to do it for my recap of the Lord Slug Dragon Ball Z movie. And then again, I'm pretty certain that this is going to be the bottom of my list for these 3 movies, although I still have to rewatch the 2 Cooler movies. So I'll go ahead and get into more detail about why this movie sucks so bad, at least for me, when I get to the ratings portion. But for now, we're going to move on to the Cooler movie, which is titled Dragon Ball Z Revenge of Cooler. And after watching it, I'd have to say that in terms of all of the movies so far that I've gone back and rewatched, especially in the subbed form, this one is probably going to be among one of my favorites. However, I can't say for certain whether or not this is going to be my favorite movie, as it does not really seem fully fleshed out in the way that it could have been. The movie's runtime is less than an hour long, and on top of that, this movie came out just a couple months after the Slug movie and a handful of weeks after the defeat of Frieza in the manga. And with that being said, I'd have to say that in terms of the rushed feel of this movie, it goes back to a similar vibe that I got from the very first two Dragon Ball movies, where the defeat of the villain just kind of seems like it happens just a little bit too fast. But in any case, I'll go ahead and move on with a brief discussion of what the plot entails. And just like the title says, it pretty much is self-explanatory. Cooler, who is Frieza's elder brother, more or less seems to want to take revenge for the death of his brother. We even get a handful of flashbacks showing the whole Bardock situation, as well as a new flashback in the form of Cooler passing up on the opportunity to shoot down Goku's pod as it races towards Earth. So in the meantime, we get another movie starting off with our heroes going camping, which is quickly interrupted by Cooler and his goons as Goku is off catching fish. And as this occurs, Gohan gets captured, Krillin gets knocked out, and Goku shows up, does a little bit of tangoing with the fodder or the side characters, and eventually gets shot in the back by Cooler as he tries to protect Gohan. Goku spends majority of this movie on his back as Gohan flies off to get the Senzu Bean, which he does manage to do, but as he returns, he encounters Cooler's minions again. He briefly gets captured by them before Piccolo does his time old tale of showing up to save Gohan and then immediately getting wrecked. Gohan returns to his father's side, gives him a Senzu Bean where Goku heals up, goes out, and faces Cooler. The only minion that Piccolo didn't manage to kill of Cooler's was Salsa, and Goku knocks him away and knocks him out pretty quickly. Goku then engages Cooler, and he gets the upper hand of Cooler until he reveals his new transformation, which is one beyond Frieza's. And in doing so, he does manage to get the upper hand on Goku for quite a while until Goku sees a bird die in front of him or faint or pass out. Goku revives the bird when he reachieves his Super Saiyan form, which we haven't seen since the Namek Saga. And then Goku proceeds to make quick work of Cooler, mopping the floor with him and ultimately destroying him by shooting a Kamehameha that easily overpowers Cooler's own death ball, which is intent on destroying the Earth. So Cooler apparently goes the way of Icarus. Goku and everybody have a laugh as Piccolo picks off Salsa with a special beam cannon from off in the distance. Now ultimately that was a very entertaining movie. There are a few things that would change or possibly even nitpick about the storyline and the plot and the timing, but I'll discuss that more toward the rating portion. For now, let's get on with the next movie in the lineup, which is another Cooler based movie, which is titled The Return of Cooler. Okay, so now that I got that rewatch done and out of the way, I'd have to say this plot is a bit more contrived than I remember it being, but I will go ahead and try to sum it up anyway. It turns out the new planet Namek is actually under attack from this random floating planet, which seems to be more metallic in nature and is somehow merging with the planet to siphon off its energy. Goku and company catch wind of this and then take a space trip flying off to the new planet Namek to help save the day. This includes Piccolo, Gohan, Oolong, Yajirobe, and Mutant Roshi for some reason. In any case, they arrive on the planet. Piccolo and everyone else except for Goku faces off against these hard armored robots, and Goku has a stare off with Cooler for presumably a good 1/3 of the movie or so. Everyone seems to pretty much get roughed up with the exception of Piccolo when it comes to the robots. Goku faces off against Cooler while Gohan, Krillin, Master Roshi, and Yajirobe are all dragged off to the big Gata star to have their energy put to use. The new body that Metal Cooler has actually been powered up and overtakes Super Saiyan Goku before Vegeta shows up and it becomes a 2v1. They struggle a good deal just to defeat one Cooler before they see an army of Cooler shows up, and then it is presumed they are captured. We don't get to see the fight that leads into them being captured, but they're hooked up to a bunch of wires, and these wires are siphoning off their energy while they're in Super Saiyan form, and Goku and Vegeta just pour more energy into it until the big Gata star basically starts exploding. Cooler separates himself and tries to attack Goku and them, but is quickly defeated. But before that happens, we get a little bit of exposition on how he survived and how this ridiculous plot came to be. Turns out part of his brain and his face were floating throughout space, and a super chip, which was also randomly floating throughout space, acquired it and incorporated it into a planet-sized ball of space scraps and technology. Honestly, there is a tad bit more to that plot, but I don't really feel the need to elaborate on it because it's just so far-fetched and ridiculous. In any case, that's going to wrap up my recap of the 3 movies. Now I'm going to go ahead and rank those 3 movies in order from 1 to 3. But before that, I'm going to go ahead and foreshadow for those of you who've been watching the entire playlist that these movies are probably going to rank low on my overall list when I get done watching them all. And this is mainly because the plots were either bad or very simple when it comes to these 3 movies, and it's understandable as all 3 of these movies were theatrical releases that all took place within 1 year's time. Now, Dragon Ball wasn't really prevalent here in the US. I don't think it even had a presence in the US at the time of these movies airing in Japan, but I can't help but assume that the manga and the anime must have been at a peak popularity at that time for them to be cranking out 3 different movies for theatrical releases. So even though I'm about to rank these movies from 1 to 3, one of them is going to get a number 1 ranking for this video in particular, but I would not anticipate them being very high on my overall list of Dragon Ball movies. So now we'll go ahead and start off with the worst movie of this trio. And for me, it was kind of hard to decide between the 2 particular movies for 3 and 2, but I'm going to go ahead and say that the worst of the 3 is actually the Return of Cooler movie. And this is mainly because the plot is just so ridiculous and far-fetched. I mean, the Lord Slug plot is also far-fetched, but not as ridiculous as this one. I mean, for starters, we have the reuse plotline of a part of Frieza's body floating through space and being saved by someone or something. And this one is taken even further because it's just a part of his face that is saved by this supercomputer chip, and then it incorporates it into the entirety of its planet-sized mesh tech. That's just way too far-fetched. And even the ending is a bit far-fetched. I mean, you have the concept of this supercomputer chip that somehow has amassed all this stuff and is able to usurp the energy of an entire planet, but can't somehow diffuse the extra energy it has, can't send it off into space, it can't use it to manipulate something or create something. It just overloads. That's a bit far-fetched for me. So for many reasons, this movie is barely going to edge out the Lord Slug movie as one of my least favorite the entirety of the animated Dragon Ball movies. So with that being said, number 2 is obviously going to be the Lord Slug movie. And as I said earlier in this video, this has always been one of my least favorite Dragon Ball movies, mainly because this plot also is a good deal far-fetched. What is the likelihood that a random Namekian who's, basically is a Brawly type, is super strong, abnormal, or quote-unquote super Namekian, just happens to come across the one planet that has a random Namekian who can create Dragon Balls? And there's just a lot of convenient plot devices throughout this movie too. He just so happens to be able to read minds, and the woman whose mind he reads in the form of Bulma just so happens to have a dragon radar in her pocket. I mean, that's amazing in itself. And then Goku and Krillin are knocked out throughout like most of the movie, so that way all this stuff can happen and he can regain his youth and his power. Just very far-fetched. And as ridiculous as that all is, it still makes more sense than the Cooler movie, so I'm going to put this one at number 2. Alright, so naturally that leaves my number 1 pick as the Revenge of Cooler movie. This one is actually fairly simple in the plot. I mean, you can just imagine the writer's room. It's just a bunch of dudes sitting around like, hey, what if Frieza had an older brother who was stronger than him and had a new form? Perfectly simple, but it works. I mean, the movie has a really good feel to it. It takes place on Earth, which is nice, but still manages to have some of those Namek Saga callbacks. I mean, one thing that does irritate me about this movie, however, is the fact that the transformations that the new transformation that we get to see from Cooler and the Super Saiyan transformation are limited to like the last 10-15 minutes of the movie. This is perfectly fine, I guess, because Goku is the type of guy who holds out until the last minute in order to, I guess, get the most out of his fight. But I feel like if I were a Dragon Ball fan who went to go see this in theaters, I'd probably feel like they're sticking a middle finger in my face by only giving a handful of minutes with the Super Saiyan transformation, given how big and how groundbreaking it would have been at that time in the manga and in the anime. And I'd have to go ahead and say that if any of the old Dragon Ball movies got the super treatment like Brawly, this one would probably be the one I think would fit the most appropriately. So there you have it for my review and rankings of the 3 Dragon Ball Z movies, Return of Cooler, Revenge of Cooler, and Lord Slug, respectively. The next video is going to contain the Super Android 13 review, alongside the Brawly Legendary Super Saiyan movie, and also the BoJack Unbound movie. So let me know in the comment section down below which of these 3 movies were your favorite, or if you have any thoughts on these movies in general. Also, please like, share, and subscribe for more Dragon Ball related content. I am John from AF Anime, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.